life lessons lie deeply intertwined into the spaces around us, every single space, from natural rock formations, mountains, valleys, and bodies of water. And these spaces carry stories with great meaning. These stories give us a sense of place, a sense of belonging, a sense of connection, and even a sense of self-awareness that makes us powerful. As a 19-year-old college student, I happened to come across one such story tied to this natural landform in northern Nevada. And actually, the story that's tied to this landform has been told for generations, but hearing it as a 19-year-old young woman was especially impactful for me at that time. And by the end of hearing that story, I was actually in tears, emblazoned with empowerment and a deeper sense of understanding of myself and my worth as an Indigenous woman. Today I'm going to talk to you all about the lessons of our landscape and also the lessons of our Mother Earth as I have come to understand the Earth as an Indigenous person. But first, I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge that I'm a visitor here. I'm talking about the significance of a place and historical significance to it. So I just want to acknowledge that where we gather today in South Dakota is actually the ancestral homeland of the Oceti-Sakowin, otherwise known as the 7 council fires of Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota people. So I want to acknowledge those that came on this land before all of us, those that looked upon this earth and this very landscape as not only beloved, but sacred and inextricably linked to who they are. So for those Oceti-Sakowin relatives in our crowd today, I humbly want to say Pidamia, thank you for your presence, and I'm so happy that you're here with us. Okay, so a little bit about my background. I grew up on the Duck Valley Indian Reservation in northern Nevada and southern Idaho. I'm actually of 4 different tribal nations, Shoshone and Paiute on one reservation, and Chippewa and Cree of Rocky Boy, Montana. But I actually grew up in Duck Valley, so I'll be talking a little bit about my upbringing there today. Duck Valley is secluded like many reservations. It is pristine and illuminated with natural life. Now, while there are, in fact, many challenges on the reservation due to the generational effects of colonization and historical trauma, we've been very fortunate to maintain connection to what humble cultural teachings that we do still have. And those teachings give us a sense of spiritual growth and spiritual nourishment that we so need. And many of those teachings are linked to the landscape and the earth. Many Indigenous cultures throughout the world look upon the earth as mother to all life, nourishing all of Earth's inhabitants with water, nutrients, and minerals. It is a fact that the earth is alive, moving, pulsating, and sustaining life of all forms. Our Mother Earth, or as we call her in the Nama language, Biiri, gives us life, and she also provides us with valuable and sometimes even harsh life lessons. Mother Earth is our provider, she is our spiritual teacher, and our most devoted nurse. Deeply embedded in the earth are medicines that strengthen our bodies and heal our ailments. Mother Earth also provides the lifeblood of all creation, water. Mother Earth, we simply would not exist without her. So as a young girl, my parents would take my sisters and I on camping trips, and actually they would take us out to connect with the land all throughout our upbringing. We would go out and camp in the mountains, in the desert, along the rims of canyons, and while we were there, my parents would point out significant landmarks and tell us the stories about them. We would gather medicines, give offerings, and pray. We would go up on mountaintops, and I remember distinctly my dad taking my sisters and I, and we were looking over this vast valley, and he said, "My girls, this is your homeland. This is the beloved place of your ancestors." It took a long time for me to really pay attention to the meaning of those stories. But what I realized was that my sisters and I, all throughout our upbringing, were doing just as our ancestors had done for millennia. We were walking upon the earth in a reverent way, partaking of Mother Earth's medicines in a loving and mindful way as well. And of course, I didn't see it as reverence back then. I just simply saw it as camping. But as I got older, I listened. I was more attentive as my parents would take us to places where my ancestors, the Shoshone and Northern Paiute people, once roamed freely. Places where, unfortunately, they hid in fear from the United States cavalry. My mind and heart were deeply imprinted with an awareness not just of those who came before me, but of course the land. And so I often found myself wondering, as my parents would take us to sacred sites where our ancestors once went to pray or give offerings. And I imagined them there, and I wondered, what were they thinking and what was in their hearts? So this sense of place really caused me to look at every place in the same way. As I would travel, I thought the very same thing about the new lands I visited. In fact, I remember the very first time that I visited Los Angeles as a young woman. I remember just even entering into the area and just being enamored by the lush hillsides with the beautiful ocean in the background. And then at the same time being saddened at the thick blanket of smog hanging over the city. And then I wondered, what did this land look like before it was Los Angeles? What did they call this place? Who walked here and what was in their hearts? The lens from which I examined the world was fixed. I viewed the earth as our mother and every landscape as someone's beloved and ancestral home. This sort of education of the land also instilled within me a sense of empathy for, of course, those who came before us, but also for everyone who will inherit the earth that we leave behind in the condition that we leave it behind. This sort of education of the land also represents a way of life that was meant to be eradicated. While the United States government sought to extinguish our cultural and spiritual ties to the land, pockets of those teachings remained hidden, tucked away, and sprinkled throughout our family groups. Yet at the same time, our way of life and our connection to the land served as justification for our extermination as a people. And throughout Indian country, as we so affectionately call the community of connected tribal communities, we continue to suffer the residual effects of that disconnection from everything that made us spiritually strong. Captain Richard Henry Pratt, founder of Indian boarding schools, coined the term, "Kill the Indian, save the man." Now, not only did this motto become the motto of Indian boarding schools, but it also basically laid the framework for federal Indian policy, which was to continue for the next 100 years. So that we today in tribal communities make great effort to connect to what we know once made us physically and spiritually strong is evidence of our determination to reconnect with our most powerful selves. That connection or reconnection is on the rise in tribal communities today, and we are becoming stronger as a result. You could even say that our reconnection today is saving our lives, especially living on the reservation where the odds seem to be stacked against us. On many reservations, or all reservations actually, all throughout the United States and Canada, we have the highest rates of suicide among youth 10, 11, and even 12 years old. We have some of the lowest life expectancies. We have the lowest high school completion rates. We have the highest rates of violence against women, where Native American women are more likely than any other woman in this country to be sexually assaulted. We have the highest rates of addiction due to mental illness, depression, and post-traumatic disorder. We are literally dying for connection. We are literally dying for meaning in this world. Yet what I know is that reconnecting to who we once were, back when we were strong and connected to the earth, provides us with a spiritual medicine that our tribal communities so desperately need. And that connection is deeply rooted in the earth. In our weakest and most desperate times today, we need simply look to the earth for nourishment, healing, and empowering life lessons. So back to this story of this landmark and the story connected to it that changed my life and affected me forever. So as a college student, I was given an assignment where I had to look at the creation stories of the Northern Paiute people. So I went into the university library and I found a book in the start corner of the library. I sat down and I began to read. Now the first story that caught my attention, or that really jumped out at me, was the story of the woman who married the bear. Now, considering that Indigenous people believe that we are related to all things, there's a time in our oral history where we not only communicated with animals, but we also intermarried among them. So anyhow, back to the story. Now this is a much more concise version of this story. but for the sake of time, I'll just share with you a portion of it. So there was a woman who married a bear. And as it turned out, this bear was mean. He was a bear after all. So the woman was saddened, and eventually she gathered enough courage to stand up to this bear, and she left him. She essentially divorced the bear and went on and ventured out into the world, where she later on found a new husband who valued her. And they went on to have children, and those children became the first people of their tribe. Well, unfortunately, the children began to quarrel incessantly. So the father decides to send some of the children to a faraway land while some of the other children stay. Well, the mother, loving her children, brokenhearted, sits down and faces the direction that her children have left, and she begins to cry. And she cries, and she cries, and she cries, until a saltwater lake forms around her, until she is solidified as stone. Now today, she is known as Stone Mother, and she sits at the base of Pyramid Lake, which is located in northern Nevada on the Pyramid Lake Paiute Reservation. And she sits there with her head down in sadness, with her basket at her side. So back in the university library, I cried. I had heard this story, just a fraction of it growing up, but I didn't know the whole story. But I was incredibly moved by the strength of this woman who left an unhealthy situation, who left a marriage that was not right for her. And in doing so, she stood up for her worth. And she ultimately served a higher purpose in life, becoming the matriarch of a nation. Later on in life, I realized that I too am a woman of the earth. I too deserve to be honored to the highest degree. I realized, though, that I must also honor myself in my courageous choices in recognizing unhealthy situations around me. Later on, as I would see pictures of Stone Mother or even visit Pyramid Lake and see her sitting there with her head down in sadness, I don't just see her sadness, I see her strength. Then I also remember my own inherent strength as a woman. And no, this is not just about women. This is about everybody. Now, the fuller version of the story, there's symbolism wrapped all throughout. But ultimately, what we gather from this is that there are deep meanings that have been told in stories for generations tied to our land. So then I wondered, what would our life be like if we were all to collectively reconnect to the earth in a mindful way, to pay attention to those generations-old lessons of our landscape? What would happen if we were all to collectively reconnect to our reverence for the earth? What would our lives look like? Well, what I intuitively know and personally know is that when we reconnect to the earth and all of the many teachings embedded in our connection and our relationship with the earth, we access the most humane, the most compassionate, and the most powerful parts of ourselves. Also, when we look to the earth as our mother, we honor her. We honor women for their ability to give life, to rear families. We honor each other, and we honor ourselves. Our bodies are all made up of approximately 60% water, while the earth, roughly the same ratio at 70%. Our bodies are also made of many of the same minerals deep within the earth, such as zinc, magnesium, sodium. So if we are made of the same things of the earth as the earth, then the earth must be our mother. And if we rely upon the earth for teachings, for nourishment, for comfort and love, for life, then the earth must be our mother. So if the earth is our mother and we are all children of the earth, then we must all be related. And not only as human beings must we be related, but we must also be related to everything in our natural landscape. Plants, animals, streams, mountains, valleys. We are essentially brother and sister. And if we were to view each other as sister and brother rather than other, how might we treat each other differently? And how might we treat the earth? And then on the flip side, if we were to collectively or en masse disconnect from the earth in our relationship to the earth, and merely see the earth as a resource to be exploited rather than a mother to be honored or even just a being to have a relationship with? What might our world look like today? What happens if we dishonor the earth? We hurt and dishonor ourselves. We hurt and dishonor each other. And in fact, we hurt and dishonor women. All throughout the globe, as we see an escalation in the destruction of Earth, there's a correlation of violence against Indigenous women in communities all over. Communities where women were once held high as matriarchs, or at least in egalitarian societies, we were on the same level as men. So clearly, disconnection has its ramifications. But we still have time. We still have time to reconnect with that part of ourselves and our relationship with the earth. We still have time to honor the earth, and we still have time to honor each other. After all, we are all related. We are inextricably connected. And if we continue to take care of the earth will continue to take care of us. Thank you.